Danielle, please join. Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to speak to you about our experience with UNICEF. We've been partners for almost 10 years now, and our story is full of important lessons in how to structure a good partnership. Despite our close relationship, we've always been very independent from UNICEF, and that independence is fundamental to the success of our partnership. I will therefore speak honestly and openly about our experiences. In 2009, we needed to find a partner we could work with to help kids in Sri Lanka. Unlike most aid bodies we spoke to, and we did speak to quite a few, UNICEF took our views on board and gave us a detailed update on their work in Sri Lanka. The great thing was that UNICEF was able to show us firsthand, so they organized a detailed trip to the area. That visit took place in early 2010, only a few months after the war had ended. The north was still a dangerous place, so security was tight. Entry was limited to UN personnel only. The UN bodies were working hard to safeguard the health and well-being of the civilians, and we were impressed by the hard attitude they adopted to their negotiations with the government and military. The children in the conflict-stricken north desperately needed to have their medical and educational infrastructure completely restored. It became all too apparent that this was not a project that we could do in isolation or with a normal NGO. Working with partnership with UNICEF allowed access, personal protection, detailed expertise in each area, financial protection, and the ability to communicate with government to work alongside our vision. It was going to allow us to do more than we expected in a shorter amount of time. We therefore entered into negotiations with UNICEF and committed to investing almost 11 million euro into the north of Sri Lanka. This was a... Thank you. This was a difficult decision at the time because the region was still extremely unstable, and it was very possible that the war could break out again. People needed the investment immediately, and we were the only major independent funders present, so we had to take a leap of faith. UNICEF was the right organization to partner with, not only for the reasons I've just mentioned, but also because we listened to each other. We valued each other's knowledge, vision, and expertise. We took on board UNICEF's advice to focus on the north of Sri Lanka. UNICEF, in turn, bought into our vision for the project and went beyond its normal remit in many different ways to facilitate us. For example, we wanted to promote local commerce and employment through small business grants to get people working again. We decided to provide funding of 400 euro to over 1,000 families to enable them to start small businesses, from shops to cattle farming, fishing, and sewing. UNICEF adapted and provided the resources we needed to direct that investment. UNICEF also agreed to work to our system of philanthropy. We are very hands-on donors with a clear idea of what we want to achieve. We participate in every decision on the project. We always observe and measure impact, ensuring that our investment becomes knitted into the fabrics of communities. By being truly transparent, UNICEF allowed us to remain in control. Throughout the Sri Lanka project, UNICEF proved itself to be a dynamic partner that was capable of not only realizing a donor's vision, but also enhancing them. The conversation between us continued onto other projects in other countries. So since 2010, we've partnered with UNICEF to help kids in Sri Lanka, South Africa, and Peru. Now we've donated over $20 million, which has had a direct and positive impact on hundreds of lives and hundreds of thousands of kids. So what have we achieved? In Sri Lanka, we targeted 4 of the worst affected towns in the main post-conflict area in the north. We provided each of those towns with a complete infrastructure and invested widely into the community to help children at every level possible. In education, we funded the construction and fit-out of new primary and secondary schools with state-of-the-art facilities which cater for thousands of students up to A levels. We introduced an accelerated learning syllabus for students who had fallen behind because of the conflict. We provided vocational training for former child soldiers. 3 years after the war, the ex-child soldiers who had suffered incredible hardship and suffering were being trained as beauty therapists, carpenters, electricians, thanks to the program. We awarded grants for university potentials, and we trained the teachers and helped build the capacity within the Department of Education. In health, we built and equipped new maternity and pediatric wards as well as small medical centers. We promoted hygiene, we funded water sanitation facilities and funded medical outreach programs. We built hundreds of wells and latrines. We purchased ambulances and mopeds for midwives and nurses so they could reach the more remote patients. We also constructed and equipped local libraries and helped fund local sports groups for children. Our investment in Sri Lanka took only 3 years, and we're very proud to have had an impact on hundreds of thousands of people there. In South Africa, we focused on the Eastern Cape, one of the country's poorest provinces. We've acted to protect and empower the most vulnerable children in this area, and as of today, we have helped over 40,000 kids in this area. The focus on Peru is one of women's rights, and in particular, education as the key to achieving equality. We are working on a program that could be replicated in many different countries if it was successful. Our objectives in Peru are simple: to increase the completion of secondary education for adolescent girls through quality education in an environment that protects them from physical and sexual violence and early pregnancy. So, after 10 years, here are some of the general thoughts from a donor's perspective on an approach that will build trust and ongoing relationships that will ensure donor loyalty for generations. The kind of loyalty that sees me here today speaking to you about our experiences, and that will see my family and me continue to advocate on behalf of UNICEF into the future. So how did we get here? Hand on heart, I don't believe that there's enough understanding or trust from donors. The UN bodies seem so large and complex, and I believe donors with no experience of UNICEF get concerned that their donations will get swallowed up while they and their vision are put to one side. That has not been my experience, but it's important to recognize that there is a challenge of perception here. Your best references will always be your donors. To me, the big opportunity here is for UNICEF to provide an alternative to the standalone family foundations. To do this, you need to convince your donors that their vision will not be diluted by UNICEF, that their donation will be spent more efficiently than through a foundation. With no spend on administration costs or salary costs, they will be able to retain control over the project with 100% transparency, and that they will be able to achieve more because of UNICEF's expertise, stature, scale, network, and access than they would have ever been able to do alone. That has been our experience. I look back to 2009 and to the many charities and organizations that we spoke to about our desire to invest in Sri Lanka. We always wanted to be actively involved in the decisions and the fine details about how to invest, how that investment would be implemented. And it still amazes me that so many organizations demanded that one should simply hand over the money and leave them to decide how it should be spent. This is not only patronizing to the donor, but also risks removing a great asset from the process, the donor themselves. Never forget that the donors have been successful in their own right, and they can likely add value to the project if you listen to them. There is nearly always going to be an opportunity to leverage a donor's experience to improve projects and to maximize output for each dollar donated. You can challenge yourselves to find an angle with each donor. I'm sure their ideas can seem strange or inconvenient if your organization has certain objectives, but your donor's vision cannot be overtaken by organizational goals. Yes, bring your expertise and knowledge to bear, as UNICEF did with us, pointing us in the direction of North Sri Lanka, but don't forget your donor's vision. Don't stop listening. Always see your donor as a partner, not someone who writes the checks. Allow them to retain some measure of control. Our effort has always been 1/3 financial, but 2/3 opinions, monitoring, evaluation, and constructive brainstorming. So actively encourage your donors to follow their investment and involve them as much as possible. Get them to scrutinize you, to ask you hard questions and to give their opinion. That will force you to always get better, to operate transparently and effectively, to spend their donation efficiently. Ensure there are targets and regular progress reviews. Build a reporting system that allows you to provide information and work to targets. Help them to build metrics. How will their donation make an impact? How will they see and measure that impact? How will you keep them involved and updated? providing this reporting system to donors instead of them having to ask for it, and improve it constantly. Also, your donor will likely have a personal reason to invest. For us, my father was a pilot in Sri Lanka, and my brother and I are half Sri Lankan. We chose South Africa because my brother lives there with his family. Understand their emotional reasons for donating and cater to them. Let them feel ownership that their vision will not only be realized, but amplified by UNICEF's involvement. Involve family. Philanthropy can become the key to how a family defines itself. If UNICEF can help a family execute their vision successfully with unique experiences, positive memories, and a collective sense of achievement, you will see families remain loyal for generations. Help them to set a culture of giving, especially at a young age, by accommodating young family members and bringing them along on trips. Record the process. Thanks to UNICEF, we have memories speaking at the UN General Assembly, at sitting at their inaugural international board. UNICEF also helped us produce a book that showcases the intervention in Sri Lanka, alongside numerous videos recorded by UNICEF during the trips. These references are incredibly important for families. Provide a single point of reference, one person. At the beginning of our negotiations with UNICEF, we asked that there be a member of UNICEF staff on the ground in Sri Lanka, someone to act as a single point of reference and as a mediator between us and the team in the field, and also to protect our interests. Kieran O'Brien filled that role, and he is, to a large degree, responsible for the partnership between us and UNICEF. He allows us to be heavily involved in each moment of our project as they unfold. UNICEF Sri Lanka were demanding, and so were we. Kieran manages expectations on both sides with elegance and ease. Ensure a donation is not swallowed up by costs which do not relate to the donor's vision. UNICEF is unique in its ability to do this. Our partnership with UNICEF allows ongoing direct investment with zero cost. Every cent of the money we invest goes towards building infrastructure and providing resources that can directly impact on hundreds of lives. That arrangement means that our investment is 100% efficient with no overheads. This is a very attractive alternative for donors over a private foundation. The donor needs to know that they will have control, that they will achieve far more. What they will achieve will be far more significant alongside UNICEF. UNICEF should be the go-to charity for all donors that want to help kids. Change the trend of philanthropy. You offer a better alternative for donors than setting up private foundations. Tell them this, explain to them why, and ask big. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan.